Hello from on air at night. What's it called? Over the
Late night.
fucking dog. Late night. No, it's after dark. Welcome to On Air After Dark. It's 10 o'clock. We're tired. The dog's driving me crazy. But we're here and we are here
Our
to.
our guest just signed off. It was midnight Eastern time. Like,
I know.
what are we doing? Like, we are getting this thing.
I know. We made our guest stay up till almost midnight. He kept saying he was happy to do it. He looked fantastic. He was like, looked like, bright eyed, bushy tailed, in uniform, therapy dog right next to him. He's a handler. So he was killing it. We're now struggling. Of course, his children are all, self-sufficient. Ours is still a toddler. Maybe that's something to do
Adults.
with it. But listen. I'm Olivia, you're Eric, and we were interviewing Jason Downey, and he
Yep,
is from Hudson Police Department, and that is in New Hampshire, correct?
correct. Yeah, relations
He
to
is,
Justin Breton, who is a former guest who was from Manchester
yes,
Police Department. The two of them went through the same instructor school.
yeah. So he is a YFR instructor. He's a police officer. He's a dad. He's a husband. He's one hell of a guy. Like, I was just super impressed with him. And I think you guys are going to be too. So we divided this episode into two episodes. So we divided this conversation into two episodes because it was long and it touched upon a lot of things. And also because I wasn't part of the first part of the conversation. I was putting our child to bed. It was bedtime. And this
Yeah,
is how this is how we
this is
roll, is that
reality.
we just, this is reality. We are juggling, we're balancing, we're making it work. So, in the first episode, it'll be Eric and Jason having their conversation, and then
A
stay
broadcast.
tuned. It was broadcast,
Yeah, it's a
broadcast
broadcast.
2.0,
Right.
and and then Lady Boss decides to show up unannounced and fashionably late, and we will keep that for the second half of this episode. So it's a two-parter, folks. It's a two-parter. So enjoy, Jason. Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited if you, at some point, if we can dive into that, because she actually said like you had a really strong breakthrough on that day, and that wasn't the dirt. The dirt that she gave me about you after just singing raving songs about who Jason is and everything you've done in your career is like, she's like, but I noticed that all of the dogs laid on top of him at instructor school. Like they're like laying on top of him. I was like, oh, so he's the dog whisperer and the dog snuggler all in one.
Yeah, well, I love dogs. So
Hey, listen, man. Like if that's the worst that came up, like
I mean, we got Haven right here with me today. So
yeah, man. So no, that was literally that was the dirt, quote unquote, the dirt that I got. I'm like,
if
eh,
that's it, man. She didn't tell you anything about the mass breakthrough. Then I'm
no,
good.
she was actually so. So this is Jason, everybody. So Jason came to instructor school just recently in our Manchester training. You're a law enforcement officer in New Hampshire, correct? For a
Yes.
long time, 24 years on the job at this point.
Yeah.
And then from your bio, you have done literally everything on the police department. Like,
Almost, yeah.
like
Not really. I
literally.
haven't done detectives, but almost everything else. But
Why haven't you gone into detectives out of curiosity?
I think we're a smaller department.
Yeah,
I tried to get it, but I've done some investigations. I was
sure.
hurt one time, so I helped out with detectives, but never officially got put in. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it's all about timing with our department. We're 52 people right now, but when I
Okay.
first started, we were like 30 something.
Sure.
We've grown, but originally trying to get into that, it's a lot. It was a lot of coveted position. It was a 5 and 2, and a lot of people got promoted out of there. So it was
Right.
very highly coveted position. So, but I did everything else.
Sure. Like literally, like patrol, fleet maintenance, recruiting, training, community programs, FTO, crime scene team, accident reconstruction, CPR and first aid instructor, SRO, system team, dog handler, and then finally YFR instructor. But we'll get to that in a minute. But now, mental health and wellness officer. Like,
Yes,
dude, like the only thing that you haven't done is become like police chief or apparently detectives. Like otherwise,
yes.
you've checked every other thing across the last 24 years, bro. Like, so what's that journey been like? Like, I mean, you've got time on, you've got experience on, like, we'll get into the whole yoga stuff, but tell me about like your experience in law enforcement and how it's changed in 24 years. I mean, you came in before 9/11, quite frankly. So,
Yes. Thank you
yeah.
for reminding me how old I am. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, it's funny. I was just doing a SISM class for one of our officers that is going into the academy next week. Well, he actually started this week, and as I'm talking about it, I started in 2000. He wasn't even born yet, so I'm
Right?
like, so it's like I've been a cop longer than he's even been alive. So now I'm starting to feel my age now. So
Right?
it's getting there. So
Listen, man, like you're looking good. 24 years on the job, like you're holding it together well. I mean, it may be paper, it may be paper clips and duct tape, but on the camera, you're holding it together well, my man.
yeah, well,
So,
I'm trying to put it where you can't see the shiny bald spot on my head because as my kids love to remind me, it's and I'm bald. So
yes, yes, yes. No, time is that one constant that keeps ticking on that none of us have figured out how to beat yet. But that's
right,
why I would like the work you do, honestly, between the mental health and wellness officer, the dog handler, SISM team leader, and now YFR instructor. Like that's all important stuff because that helps you and others not just survive the career, but hopefully thrive throughout it. And more importantly, get to a point where they can retire and enjoy a long retirement. Because that's the goal. Like our mission statement should be let's bankrupt the pension systems. Like because
right,
they're counting on us dying young. And so if we can live long, healthy retirements, like that's the goal. That's the goal.
right, exactly. That is my goal for them to win in the retirement game. So that's what my goal is originally. So,
Yeah.
but I want to before we start really is I'd love kudos to you guys. I was just listening to you being published and all the stuff that you do, it's going to make my job easier with administration. And I'll talk
Yeah.
about, I actually got all my chief and my three captains in a yoga class,
Hell
all
yeah.
together. So we
Hell
did
yeah.
that. So we're getting there. So it's
Yeah.
baby steps, but we're growing. So
No. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the kudos and I'm not cutting that out because for those that haven't listened to this in a while, what he's alluding to is the fact that we have a published research study on our protocol that shows that we are able to prevent post-traumatic stress in those that have our subthreshold PTSD. And for those that already are diagnosably with post-traumatic stress, still we're able to reduce their symptomology. Like that's what we should be about. That's what command staff needs to hear. And the fact that it's on paper in the American Psychology Association's journal, like that's a big deal. So I appreciate that you're looking forward to using that tool within your agency because that's the goal. That's why we put ourselves through that scrutiny, quite frankly, to make it easier for folks like you to get the mission out there. And
yeah,
so thank you. Like thank you. So no, that's exactly what he's alluding to. And that is a huge deal because before we've pointed at studies that were like adjacent to us, but to actually have the study done on yoga for first responders protocol and talking with you as your experience through instructor school, had you done yoga before YFR instructor school?
once or twice.
Okay, so limited experience.
Right.
And so we came in, did we shift your mindset at all about what yoga was, or were you excited because you had already heard about us? Like, how did you come across us? Because this, quite frankly, the state of New Hampshire kind of got us all at one time because of this grant.
Right. So I, Justin Preston forgot. So I'm going to remind Justin how this all came about. So
Yeah.
very funny story. And I wish Olivia was here, but
I'll show
so
you.
what would happen, how this all started is, I was doing the wellness program or just a peer support person, and a very close friend of mine, she's actually retiring in in a week. She's done 24 years. We went to the academy together,
Yeah.
and we've had some career highs and lows and stuff like that, and so definitely very close to her. And we lost a person, or she lost a retired police officer, a sergeant here. She actually was training for the national law enforcement ride from New Jersey to Washington D.C. for National
Yeah.
Police Week. She actually got killed in a hit and run accident. So at one point, so this is one of those things that this was one of the things that she really wanted to bring to our department, because through retirement it was very tough for her. Obviously realizing how like this career has changed, or how what we expect. So ultimately, at one point, Officer McGowan, Shelley, we call her, she's Rochelle McGowan, but we call her Shelley.
Yeah.
She was listening to Guns and Yoga, and
Of course.
Olivia
Yes.
Mead was on Guns and Yoga.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, Jason, she pulled me aside. We need to like go to instructor school. She was all about it. She's like, I did a deep dive. I reached out to them, and she was doing all this stuff. So then I reached out to you guys, and then we were at a SISM regional meeting with Justin. I'm like, hey, Justin, I was looking at this. We need to, like, maybe with this grant, maybe we can do YFR.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, let me. And he wrote it down. And then of course Justin did his whole deep dive, and probably like tried to fly out. He probably had drones going over your and everything. How Justin does things.
Right.
Vet you. And then next thing you know, you're in a grant, and she was going to be part of it. But she's like, I think I'm retiring, so I'm not going to do the school. So she did all this work. So ultimately, I give her credit that for New Hampshire, because the Guns and Yoga podcast, listening to Olivia speak so highly in the effects of it, that motivated her to talk to me. And like, I was like looking at it, I was definitely all in about the instructor. We were actually trying to figure out how to convince our command staff to send me and her to instructor school before the grant. And then I'm like, hey, guess what? Looks like Justin's going to work on a grant to get a certain amount of instructors, so we'll just hold off. And we ended up doing it, and it was a fantastic experience. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Like, do you know what grant they used? Because like people always ask all the time, like, how do we fund this and that kind of stuff? And I say, well, I know there's grants out there, but I honestly don't even know like what grant y'all used to make this happen.
I think they call. I can't speak for. I think it would be. You'd have to ask him, but I think it was probably the NEWA grant.
Okay.
The acronym is NEWA, so
Sure.
I think that's what it is. Like wellness.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, and we actually did an instructor school up in Oregon that was on that national law enforcement health and wellness grant or whatever it is too. So those that are listening, use that grant money for this. Like, and it's every year. Like, there's tons of money in that grant every year. So it turns out you can use it and have a good experience. So no, that's super cool. And so you had done yoga once before. Like, did you go to a studio, or did you like do it? Like,
yeah, so it's like, very funny. I was before YFR. I was looking at trying to still maybe do some yoga with some some of the officers, and there was a woman, that local person, so I was trying to keep it local, and she was starting her own business, and I knew her through the school system, and I was talking to her, and me and my wife did a couple of classes together, but I just could never get the guys there. Again, that's the difficulty, right? Getting officers to go to a studio, and then be vulnerable, because at the end of the day, we kind of know where it can be, a very, emotional and a great experience part. They probably just don't want to be in those positions, and no one's protecting them, so it can be a little nerve-wracking for them. So now with this, we have our own building across the street. We have a workout gym, but we have, next to it, we have an open space where I'm going to be able to do it. and I have all the mats and blocks and I'm ready to go. So we actually are rolling it out slowly. So I actually have a class next week for the Marine
What?
squad. Yeah,
Cool.
Chief is approved overtime, so they're going to do it on duty, but he's going to hang the morning crew about an hour, so I can do the about an hour of yoga for them. So yeah,
Brother, like that's the
this
thing.
is our first official PD class. I did a couple of other
Yeah.
classes with other officers and training and the captain, the chief, to kind of show them what it's all about. So,
Right.
but every time I've done it, everyone has, oh my God, this is completely different from what I experienced, what I've
Yes.
done, and this is fantastic. I'd love to do it more. I'm a peer support person at Camp Resilience, and we do it, and every time we do it, they're like, "Why is it in the middle of the week? We should have been doing this every morning." So it's so funny how
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh wow, I've done yoga, but this is completely different." So,
Yeah, and like that's kind of what I'm getting at. And like this is an amazing, quite frankly, start to this because people don't even have to listen to the full episode to get like the golden nuggets, and these are only going to keep coming. And so
right,
so you're just getting guys to literally just try it. Like you're just saying like give it a try, and they're
right,
the ones that are coming back and be like, we need this more, we need it all
right.
week long at the camp, and the command staff and people have said that this is different with just literally an introduction. And I mean, and for those out there having done one yoga class before, obviously we're not a yoga instructor before instructor school, and so clearly you've learned the skill set on how to translate this to your people through that process and take it, translate it, and obviously be highly effective. From what it sounds like.
Right, and I think the big sell is it doesn't matter. Whether you're flexible. You've got that dad bod. Like you have some injuries from the job,
The
what it told
job,
you,
like we all do.
job of what it's caused some ailments and physical aches. Like it's okay. Like you can do this. There's other postures that we can do. There's modifications. Let's go out there and kind of do it and just kind of be there and kind of just take some time for yourself and feel out and find out where the stress is and kind of process that. So I'm excited. I'd love to, actually become a, full instructor at the instructor school at some point.
Yeah.
I was looking into, Maggie was trying to talk to me about Arizona, but I help out with National Night Out. And it's a big night. It's like in
Sure,
the
sure,
middle of
sure.
it. And my chief would kill me if I decided to yell on him saying, I'm going to go to the instructor school. So, kind of help out. But at one point, I would love
Listen,
to be a part of it.
yeah, let's get you rolled in there. Like, yeah, let's get you rolled in there. I mean, it's now out to the national public. They all heard it. So now your hat is in the ring, as they say at this point. So no,
Yeah. So, I mean, my journey is, I think, I think a lot of people, I just recently talked at a summit and I kind of told my story and
yeah, and I'm curious to dive into that a little bit because you have a powerful story, man. Like,
yeah, and so I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels because every time I've told or shared some parts of my story, people are like, oh my God, I've felt that or I've been
yeah,
there. And, and that touches me in the sense of sometimes I always joke with people like I'm the dad that is, at the 3 and 4 year old, soccer practice that I'm the coach. At the end of the season, I'm handing out certificates and I'm crying and I'm like, why are you crying? Like, but it's like I always wear my heart on my sleeve, so I tell the corny jokes. I'm always looking for a good dad joke. So, you know, so I always tell that people I'm sincere. It's not, I'm not trying to be corny just to be fake. I mean, it's
right,
truly sincere when I say it. So, I mean, it started off as wanting to help people, right? Love the job, do it for free, and and it's fantastic. And I tell you that more of my stress came from not the calls for service. It was poor leadership. It was,
which is
and I
fair.
don't. It was, the management and how people were treated.
Yes,
And none of the administrators now are here. The ones that I have the heartache over and stuff like that. They're retired and they moved on. So I mean, my administration now is completely supportive. I mean, we've established this position because our chief is like, no, I want this position to happen, and a lot of support, from the command staff all the way down. So. I don't want people to think that when I talk about the administration, it's past administration. So
sure, sure.
And it's, it was really tough. And I kind of talk about how at the academy they teach you everyone has a gun, everyone's a threat, right? So when you
Right.
first get out of the academy, you're geared up, you have hypervigilance, right? You're
Like through the
always
roof.
through the roof,
Yes.
right? And then you get to FBO and they're like, hey, listen, calm down a little bit. Not everyone has a gun, but at the same time, you better be ready because you don't want to you don't want to get caught or hurt
Right.
or mess up, right? So we're still on edge. And I think what happened is, but after going to YFR and going through instructor school, they don't teach us how to regulate ourselves, right? And this is
Right.
what yoga does.
Right.
And that's one of the definitely the key parts that I took out of it is like, wow, all right, now we're getting tools to help us regulate ourselves from, and that's what we should be bringing to the academy in the sense of, if you're going to get them all jacked up, teach them how to come back down because we all know what hypervigilance can do to us over time and our heart and everything else. There's so many studies on it, with our heart and heart failures and heart attacks and building up plaque, so all these different things. So, so we talk about that. And again, I love my job and I was motivated and wanted to help people. Then, like, it was something so stupid and simple. It's, I took a lobby call for a woman and she was complaining about a hunter on a property. And we're in New Hampshire, so there's hunters on properties all the time.
Dude,
And she
I've been up to New Hampshire and it's like the woods people. Like it takes like you get out of town and like you can disappear in the woods in 2 seconds.
Yeah, so the way it's a wooded area, but she didn't like this person on her property. So I kind of gave her advice. But when I brought her into the interview room to kind of talk to her, I just said to her, I said, what seems to be the problem today? That was my question, right?
Sure.
And thought nothing of it, gave her advice. I went down to the area, checked, the hunter was gone, so there was really nothing more I could do. 2 days later, I have a letter in my mailbox from the chief of police saying that there's been a
What?
formal complaint filed against me.
What?
So I'm looking at it. I'm like, I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't know what happened. Next thing you know, they're telling me that she felt I was dismissive, and how later on it comes out. And I didn't know this originally. When I asked her what seems to be the problem today, he thought I meant or saying is like, oh, you're here again. What seems to be the problem? You're a nuisance, and I was kind of being dismissive.
Whoa.
And
Right.
I was new, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm going through this, and I'm kind of venting it in the locker room after working out one day, and there's a captain in the locker room ready to shower as well, and I started talking about the call, and then he's like, "Hey, what's going on with that? I heard about that." So I kind of just tell him, I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I said this, and I have no what the problem is." Okay, thought nothing of it.
Right.
I had to write a memo, and brand new. I don't know how to write a memo, so I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just kind of put it out there. Later on, I find out the captain used the information that when I was off duty in the locker room, as he asked me as he was showering, used that in the internal investigations interview. Right? So he uses that information or how I was like, that. And then the sergeant comes and goes, well, this is what you said this is how you said it. You probably should. And I'm like, I explained the whole thing to him. He's like, well, that's not what you wrote in your memo. So it's sustained. So they sustained it against me. Like so I was told that I can't ask that question anymore. I have to like, how can I help you today? I can never ask like what seems to be the problem. Can't ask that anymore. So, and I'm like brand new. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to
This
help people. And
right.
now I'm like, and then all of a sudden the sergeant couldn't even help me try to write a memo, right? Couldn't say, hey, listen, if this is how you're feeling, if this is what happened, this is how you do it. Nothing. It was like, boom, rubber stamped it. We're done with it. I can't deal with this. The person's complaining, and that's it. So I'm like, how do I trust this agency? How do I trust that they're going to
Totally.
have my back? So there was a lot of angst about that. I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? And how am I supposed to stay motivated? Right. So,
Yeah.
so it kind of like takes away the why or my
Real
purpose. Like I'm thinking like, I'm trying to
really.
help people. I did everything I possibly could do, and I'm still going to get in trouble for it. What is this world? And
What
I'm
is the
still
point?
24, 25. So it
Right.
was tough. So, so you kind of do that, and I talk about my challenge and my biggest challenges. hopefully I can do this without getting too emotional, but sometimes it just
Listen,
happens. But
listen. If you get emotional, that's okay, because guess what? That's part of processing this shit out too. Like, so I don't. We listen. We've had people cry on this podcast. We swear all the time if that's how you get it out. So, dude, like, just be authentically you. Like, this is this. So the audience. But honestly, like, I'm so like administrative betrayal. Like, we talk about like how this training is not just for the big bad ugly incidents. Like, it
yeah,
can be utilized in those, but we often say it's also for your typical Tuesday, and more. And like, this would have been, gosh, 20 years ago already that you were dealing with administrative betrayal, and I'm sure other
right,
people were as well 20 plus years ago. And arguably it's not gotten better in some agencies. It may have arguably gotten worse. It all depends on leadership. Like you said, your agency has turned over, leadership has changed, it's in a much better spot now. But for you, even with leadership turning over, that was a defining moment in your career early on, regardless of who's sitting in the seats above you at that point. Like,
right,
and so you got to deal with that. And I would say, ask, like you said, you lost your why. And so what am I doing here? How am I supposed to impact change? That's what, I mean, that's why you become a law enforcement officer. You want to help your community and impart good change on your community. Right. And so,
right,
and now I've tried it. I got in trouble for it. So what the fuck? Like, that's where you're at. So
right.
take it from
And
there.
and that's where I was at. And I tell in my story, when I presented the other day,
Yeah.
I said, unfortunately, I let them change my purpose and my why. I let them affect it. And
Yeah.
now I'm knowing like that shouldn't happen. Like I should still stay with my why and my purpose. If you're on the right path, don't let the negativity of that. I let them almost dictate how I was going to do something, and that's just not right because it was easier for them, right? They didn't want the confrontation of a complaint or doing hard work, and sometimes
Right.
so that's one of those things that it's frustrating now that I let them do that, but I want people to know that don't you have your why, you have your purpose, stay with that. Like there's no reason if you're on the ethical and moral code, there's nothing that they should be able to hurt you through it. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's when you deviate from that, obviously that's a whole different thing. But if you're doing what's right, trying to do that, don't let people take away your why. And I kind
Right.
of let them do that. And it was a cop out to a degree, right? I was overwhelmed, stressed out, didn't know what to do, right? I'm young, no strategies or anything like that. And so what am I doing? Everyone else is bitching. So what do? I hop on the bitch train, and everyone's bitching, and it turns into this negativity. And then all of a sudden, it's like, all right, well, we hate them, so
Yeah.
let's just hate them instead of like having a conversation, right? Have that conversation with that person, like, hey, listen, I don't really like how this is going. I don't feel comfortable. Why are you doing this? Like, why are you affecting my why, or you're affecting this as well? I'm afraid. I don't trust you. Like, have that conversation. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to teach our administrators now is to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. You know,
Right.
and how to really do that, and really how to have that hard conversation, because a lot of us don't really know how to have that hard conversation, or as soon as it gets awkward, we back out, or we tell a dark humor joke, or we laugh, or we giggle, right? And we don't or we yell and scream, right? Because those are that's how we do it instead of trying to calm down, right? So what do? It's either we're a Hulk smash, or we're just like laughing like we're trying to be like the best funniest comedian ever. So trying to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. And what I found talk with people too is like sometimes the funny guy, quote unquote funny guy that tries to solve all the problems with the humor is honestly the one that's honest, seemingly like once you start to peel that back, suffering the most. Like there's a lot of pain very buried underneath that humor too.
right,
And so it's how we're trying to cope with it and deal with it. And so we were kind of joking, not joking in the beginning, that you've done everything but be the chief of police in your agency. So
yeah.
you are clearly an informal leader within your organization. And so how are those conversations going with your leadership? I'm curious. Like how are they reacting when you push on them like that?
I think sometimes they're like, oh God, he's coming to talk to us again. Like, enough. Will you stop? Like, we're working on it. Give us a break. Right? I'm always I'm always interjecting, and I'm always trying to help out. Like, hey, listen, have we thought about this? And they roll their eyes and they laugh and they joke, but I think they do appreciate it because I think they really want to be better. Like I said, they're really on board. Like I said, our chief is paying
Yeah,
overtime for us to do
totally.
yoga on duty, so we're not, so we're getting that buy-in, opposed to, all right, well, you have to do it on duty and volunteer. Some people may know, but all right, we're going to
Right.
start you with on duty, get some buy-in, and then we're going to start having classes and keep it regular. And
Right.
so, and again, one of my goals too is once I have everybody go through it, get a group, do a pro qual test before, and then run it for a couple of months, and then see if the test changed. That's my
Ooh,
goal.
I love
That's what
it.
I'm thinking about.
Take notes
So
on that. Like, well, the next study will be on around what you're doing, man.
yeah,
I
maybe.
mean, honestly,
So
because
that's one of the
part of it's
things that
job performance too, right? So,
huh?
because part of it's job performance. Like, it's not
Right,
just about down regulation, but it's about performing your job better. And we all
right,
know that, like, we've heard heard anecdotal stories about qualifications and how if you can put breath work into it, mindfulness into it, obviously your qualification scores typically go up. Very rarely do, if you implement those tools, do the scores come down.
right.
And so you're onto something there. Like, not only can we use it to regulate our mind, body, nervous system, we can use it to de-escalate situations. Oh, and by the way, we can use it so we perform better on standardized like qualifications on tests that we have to perform. Like, that's
Yeah.
yeah, let's go.
Right, right, and I think too is you have that. I love that. I love the threat versus challenge, and the mindset that changes. When we're in class, and then obviously the upside of stress. The one of
Yeah.
those books that you recommend that we read, and I read it, and just thinking about, I was telling all the people like, what is the threat versus challenge, how it kind of changes our mindset, and obviously everything inside our mind, how we react to it. But I said, to the new guys when I was doing the system class, I go, what is the command to draw your gun on the target? Threat. All right.
Yeah.
What happened if I just said challenge? Does that change how you feel? Or are you now all of a sudden breathing heavier because you say threat? Like, I'm not saying that we should downplay there's a threat or there's a danger and you
Right,
potentially,
right.
it's a life or death situation. But I think if you're able to say, this is a challenge, this person is a lot bigger than me, it's going to be a challenge to fight this person, opposed to, oh my God, I'm a threat, I might not live. I think it changes our mindset, and I think it healthier. Maybe we might be able to relax that tunnel vision, relax our nervous system a little bit, and kind of be able to do more instead of do less.
Right.
So that's
Wow. Man, like,
that's
yes. Yeah, man, that's powerful stuff.
So
Powerful
I mean,
stuff.
that's one of the things that I'm trying to, spread around here too. But I mean, like I said, it's baby steps. But you know,
Totally. Yeah.
but
So
so
to
yeah,
go ahead and
so my
continue on with your story a little bit,
yeah,
because you
so
also like tease. You're good. Like,
I get
this
distracted, or I have these things.
listen, man, this is literally an open-ended conversation. I have a guide of questions that we asked you to kind of help
Yeah,
me understand who you are and guide the conversation. But at the end of the day, I like to run these literally as a cop and a firefighter, or sitting around the dinner table or coffee room table, like shooting the shit. So
yeah.
go on all the tangents. Take me on the ride, man. So
All right.
I'm up for it.
Yeah,
So, like, in your story, like, you were newly married when you got hired, so you're dealing with that too. Like, and that's real. Like, a lot of guys get hired young, a lot of women get hired young, and so they're starting their family out and dealing with becoming a law enforcement officer or a firefighter, dispatcher, whatever it is, and struggles there because that's inherently its own struggles. And then you have a new forming family and trying to navigate those waters and kids and all that situation. So, like, you opened up for all that stuff, man, and that's all real. Like, that's all real,
right.
right?
Well, and I think too is I think a lot of us, and that's why I've gone to a bunch of these trainings and people speaking, and a lot of them, unbelievable stories and horrific stories, and I don't have like officer involved shooting, or something like huge major traumatic event that I've had.
Yeah.
But I think the accumulation of 24 years and trying to manage this job, raise children, keep a marriage to the same person, I think it resonates with a lot of people, in our fields,
100%.
So I think I figured, I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know what? let me see if I can spread this story a little bit more. So, and anybody that wants to listen, I'm trying to, speak. Like I said, we did the summit. I'm willing to talk to anybody about all of this stuff and share it because I don't want people to feel the way I felt or the struggles that I had. If they can actually have an aha moment at year 8, opposed to
Right.
almost like year 20 for me or whatever it may be, or
Right.
having
Yes.
small aha moments as I'm sitting there throughout my career, and then like losing the why again, and then trying to fight back to get the why, you know, and motivating. So the challenge. So I go into like talking about the style of career and then the challenges, and I said, for the most part, I talk about that. My challenges, we talk about professional, personal, and my two biggest challenges were definitely personal.
Yeah.
We had two beautiful children. So we were, married at 23. So I got hired in August by the Hudson Police Department. We were married in September. So it was
Yeah.
quick. I was able to get a honeymoon before the academy, and and it was great. She loved it. She was all, people love being, a police officer, the shiny badge, everything. It's sexy,
Right.
right? It's really sexy.
Yeah.
You're doing unbelievable work. Everyone wants to hear the stories, but until they don't want to hear the stories,
Right.
anymore. So, and it can get tough. But so we were pregnant with number 3, and we all of a sudden we're probably I tried to make every appointment that I could, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we gotta go upstairs after we're in the ultrasound room. We gotta go upstairs to the doctor again, and like, all right, this is weird, So we're not thinking
Yep.
anything, and then all of a sudden we get our midwife says, yeah, they're seeing something that's not really concerning. So we're gonna send you to a specialist. Don't worry about anything right now. Like, yeah, don't worry, right? It's like, don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Trust me.
But you're gonna send you this to the specialist, and so we go to the specialist almost like a couple of days later. And you don't even meet with a doctor first. You meet with a social worker that's gonna prepare you for what you're about to hear, or potentially what's gonna
Yeah.
happen. So you're kind of in there. And, my wife, she's a social worker. She actually went to school for what this person was actually talking to us about originally, but
Okay.
now she's actually in elementary school as a social worker and a social emotional coach. So she gets it. So she knows what kind of we're doing. But again, right, when you're in it and it's your own child, it's a little different. It's a game
Yeah,
changer.
man.
So we meet with the doctor and they do all these different extra tests, and they're like, it's not good. And we don't know if your baby's going to even make it to term. It could pass now. You could live for a couple of years, or you could have a stillbirth. We don't know. So it's a lot of unknowns. And
Right.
so we're sitting there. We have two beautiful, healthy kids, and nothing ever had it. We're both fairly healthy. Have no idea what's going on. So finally, right around 20 weeks, our baby passed. So in utero. So all of a sudden, we have to have the baby removed. And so our son August, we had no idea whether it was a boy or girl. We didn't want to find out, but later on, after we did find out. So
Sure.
they remove the child, and you don't really even think about a lot. I'm looking at it as like I'm there to support my wife, right? Obviously there's a loss, but the baby's not coming home with us, but I'm there to try to support her through this difficult time. And so months pass, everything's kind of going, and and we're talking, and we're trying to support each other. But at one point, she's telling me, I definitely want to have more kids.
Yeah.
And you're kind of sitting there, and I'm like, okay, all right. So now you want to have more kids. The cop brain cops in. All right, I cope with it. I packed in a backpack. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yep.
It's time to move on. We have two kids here. It's time to move on. And she was stuck. She wasn't ready. And I'm like asking her, and she's not communicating. She's kind of shutting down, kind of withdrawing a little bit. I don't have any real So I'm like now like, all right, I'm moved on. You want to tell me you want more kids, but you're shutting down. I don't know what else you want. So it turns into a lot of
Right.
tension. We become roommates almost, right? I go to work, and then I come home. I help with the kids, and then it's like kind of like we're not connected. There's no connection,
Yep.
and it breaks my heart. And I joke, I tell people all the time. I said she's my person, 100%. My wife is my person, no doubt.
Sure.
And we're sitting there, and finally we're in a really, and I'm on, when we're, I'm thinking almost, I don't know if we're going to survive this, right? This is
It's
my
that
person.
bad. It's
I
at
don't
this point,
know
it's
if we're
that bleak.
I don't know if we're going to be able to, I don't know if we're going to be able to move on. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And finally we have, it's almost like kind of a blowout. And then she says to me, before August passed, I felt it moving, right? So I never carried a child. And you think about it,
Right.
like, all of a sudden it registers, like, she's telling me, and then she just breaks down and cries. But she didn't open up to me, right? She didn't, for some reason, she was holding on to it. I don't know whether she didn't want to share it to make me feel, I don't know. But we embraced there and had a moment. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And you want to talk about feeling small? Like, I felt like a jerk because, like, I'm like, all right, let's go. I'm moving on. Let's go. It's time. It's time. And again, I wasn't looking at the whole picture of how she felt, right? I was looking at, like, you're telling me one thing, but your emotions are telling me. So we were able to finally move on, and and then I was able to, like, able to kind of then communicate. But during this time too, is like I wasn't having a great time at work, so it was like there was no safe space.
Right.
Home wasn't healthy, and work wasn't healthy. So I was like in limbo, and it was just not a good space. And so then I found like a CISM class by accident. I was looking to help out because I was looking for how it came about is I wanted to help officers if they were ever involved in an officer involved shooting, how to help them, so the union could protect them, like when I could say no, you can't talk to them or not. All of a sudden, one of the guys goes, "Hey, I got this great training that they're having up in Manchester, New Hampshire." I'm like, "All right, I'm in." Right, so I end up going. Next thing you know, it's a peer support class, 3-day peer support system class, and I'm sitting in it like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. Like I'm just like all of it. It's like I'm the poster child for disgruntled, angry, person. Just like
Right. I checked the boxes.
checking all the boxes, and I finally, I'm like, so after that, I'm like, I don't want people to feel the way I felt. We had a failure on other officers at our agency. This is my purpose. This is my why. So I found my why again, right? So and I'm on there. So, and that was definitely one of the things that helped me change. But the other challenge that I talk about is
And I don't want to gloss over your personal story, because not to make this about me, but my Olivia and I, we've had a hell of a fertility journey. We've shared this publicly in other forums, but we've done at this point 4 rounds of IVF. We've had multiple miscarriages. In fact, one just about 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago is from when this is being recorded. And so for you to share that story and that personal story, man, like, it hits home, because we're dealing with this. We're same but different, right? Like, we didn't carry to 20 weeks, but we've had a hell of a journey. Thank God we have one little girl. But that, like, those stories about that family story, sharing that publicly is important, because so many people suffer in that area in complete silence. They don't know, because it's something we don't talk about openly very often. And so I just want to, having struggled through fertility issues with my wife and myself, I just want to say thank you for sharing that part of your story, because it resonates. It does. And it's something that people don't share often.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.